Welcome to OhSister, where I unpack my Mormon sister missionary journals 10 years later. Because it comes up in my journal during the week, and because it's a pretty common part of the missionary experience, I wanted to talk about Lock Your Heart, the infamous talk from Spencer W. Kimball this week. So, I've mentioned that there is an approved missionary reading list. I will, of course, talk more about that as we go on. But since there is a very limited list of things missionaries are allowed to read, of course, after a while, missionaries, it's like, okay, I've been reading the same thing over and over. You start to look for more material. My mission actually had an extra binder that you were given when you arrived, and it was full of extra talks and extra rules and things. I'll try to grab it sometime, and I'll definitely want to share some of those things on here. But however missionaries find them, they are these talks given by various church authorities that we find, and we usually make our own little missionary gospel worldview with them. They tend to be addresses given in more local conferences or meetings, not just things from the big general conference. So when you find something like this, it's very exciting. It's like finding a hidden gem of special secret sauce that God only doled out originally to a lucky few. It's another way you could think about it. It's like finding more of the lore of the thing that you're obsessed with and talking about all the time. So what is today's lore that I'm talking about? Spencer W. Kimball was, at this point, when the talk was given in, 1968, he was then an apostle, so he wasn't quite yet a prophet. And I have to shout out the blog. I believe this is a Faithful LDS blog, where I was able to find this talk, and I think they have a lot of other talks that are not official, general conference talks, but big important ones from throughout history, like this one. They have them archived. So it's from ldsminds.com, link in the description, of course. If you're curious at all, you should click on the link and read the whole talk, because it's wild. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I am going to read the last part of it so you can see what what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so he first told a few stories about missionaries in the mission area that he was visiting being involved in scandal and being sent home in disgrace. And then here we go. This is one program, and we are all concerned about it. These mission rules, you see, are very important. We've had 137 years of experience. Now, that ought to be enough experience to prove something, shouldn't it? Through 137 years, we have come to the conclusion that if two people will stay together, the chances for sin or serious trouble are reduced about 98%. Once in a great while, two companions will both go sour at the same time, but it isn't the usual thing. If missionaries will, when they leave Salt Lake City, the mission home, the day they are set apart, if they will just lock their hearts. If they've got a girl in there, that's all right. Lock her in. But if you haven't got one in, then lock it against all other girls of every description. And the same applies for young women, too. I am talking mainly to you elders. You lock your heart and leave the key at home. And you never open it here. It's impossible to fall in love with someone unless you open your heart. Your heart is the only organ that has any ability to get into love, you see. And when a missionary says, "I just fell in love with a girl," well, that's as silly as it can be. Nobody does. Nobody ever did. So we just don't fall in love unless we are fooling around. We never fall in a crater unless we are somewhere near the edge of it. I have been up to Vesuvius and on a number of craters and volcanoes, and I know you just don't ever fall in a crater unless you are on the edge of it. And so you just keep your hearts locked. I said, lock them in Salt Lake when you leave the mission home and don't give a thought to it. But if you go around and say, well, she is kind of a pretty girl. She surely is a sweet little thing. She's a nice girl. I'd like to talk to her. I'd just like to visit with her. Well, you're in for trouble, and that trouble can bring you a lifetime of trouble and a lifetime of regrets if you continue on with it. So can I impress that again? Lock your hearts and leave the key at home. Wherever you live, leave the key home with your folks. And your heart, it's only that part of it that deals with people generally that you open up. We just can't tolerate it, can we? We can't individually, we can't totally. Someone said, well, is there any harm to marry a Mexican girl if you are working in Mexico? No, that isn't any crime, but it proves that some missionary has had his heart open. He has unlocked it. Is it wrong to marry a German girl when you have been on a German mission? Why, no, there is no crime in that, if you met her some other way. But when you meet her in the mission field, and you have opened your heart, I tell you it isn't right, and you have shortchanged your mission. Just keep your hearts locked. Your whole thought should be missionary work. How can I make it more plain and more important than that? I'd like to, because there is no reason whatever for any missionary to ever become involved, not even in a decent way, with any girl on the mission field. It isn't the place. You guaranteed. You promised. You went through the temple. You remember what you did in the temple. Remember you promised you'd do all the things the brethren request of you, to live the commandments. That's one of the commandments when you go into the mission field. Thou shalt not flirt. Thou shalt not associate with young women in the mission field, or anyone else for that matter, on any other basis than the proselyting basis. You promised, and you would not want to break a promise you made before the Lord in the holy temple of the Lord. And when you wrote the letter of acceptance to President McKay that was implied in it, you knew, of course, every missionary knows, that he isn't going out to court, that he isn't going out to find a wife. He's got plenty of opportunity when he gets home, and the mission field isn't the place. Elder Spencer W. Kimball, then of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, Latin American Mission Tour, 1968. Okay, so when this comes up in my journal, I go on a less direct discussion about the subject, but reading through this, which we would have done on my mission, it is very clear that romance or sexual experiences or flings of any kind are extremely forbidden. I was checking on, Reddit and such things to see if this is still the case, and it seems like, yes, masturbation alone can get you sent home from your mission. And if there's any involvement with someone else, you're facing excommunication from the church. So it's a huge, big deal. And in the context of the sisters meeting where this comes up, it's kind of interesting because originally this talk is very much like, of course it's to the sisters, but really this is for the elders because women are guardians of virtue and they don't have any of these problems. This is only a problem for the boys. But of course it was in an all-girls meeting, all-women's meeting when that comes up. So I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that point, but I think this is a very good example of the sort of more fundamentalist stuff that missionaries are absorbing and getting access to, like just even the framework of like how dangerous it is to like let yourself fall in love and like you have to lock part of yourself away is like a very visceral way to describe that, a very strong command. But in addition to that, there are all these like very misogynist and like racist things, like talking about like sort of infantilizing, at least the tone I read this in, it's very infantilizing and demeaning of like well, is there any harm to marry a Mexican girl if you're working in Mexico? Like, it's just picky. Ugh. It's okay. I want to. It's grossing me out, but I want to power through it and say what's grossing me out. Um, it's like the sexualization of any women around any man. It's like setting up the grape culture, if you know what that is, of the idea that men are just barely able to restrain themselves from like wanting to be involved with and like have interest in and have the attention and affection of any woman that they're around, is like really gross. And especially a big problem of like Black women, Hispanic women, Latina women, BIPOC women, is there's so much of the extra danger is the sexualization of, there's just like been centuries and centuries of seeing these women as like more sexually available and, all these terrible things. If you want to learn more about that, you should, and I'm not a scholar or anything. Like, I know that it's a problem, so you should learn more about that. If you don't know much about it and you want to learn more, definitely do. Also, just this long, like, sort of monologue of excuses that, or like example thoughts that is provided of like what an elder could be thinking really grossed and creeped me out. I'll read it again just to remind you of how gross and creepy it was. If you go around and say, well, she is kind of a pretty girl. She surely is a sweet little thing. She's a nice girl. I'd like to talk to her. I'd just like to visit with her. Yeah. Of course, if that's how you feel about someone, it's not immediately a terrible, gross, creepy thing. But the fact that this is like an old man talking about young women this way is like bringing the church's history of old men being interested in young women. Like, that is an element that it reminds me of, and that's creepy to me now. Also, just like something that I'm still really struggling with, and I hope that after more therapy, I won't have to struggle with it so much, but I just always have this sense that I'm like a piece of meat on the menu. Just like me as a woman being out in the world, I always feel, because of the way people talked around me where I was growing up, and the sort of things like this that I was reading, and the sort of things I heard at church, it's like I always feel like if I see just some random guy out in the world doing his own thing and we're like not interacting at all, my immediate assumption is that he's like interested in me, and I have to be nice, but also like make sure he knows that I'm like I need to like be a guardian of virtue, and I need to make sure I'm like being modest and not being an extra temptation to make it extra hard for him to like react to my presence like I'm a normal human being and not like I'm a piece of meat. Ugh, it's so annoying. I really hate that part of my my like socialization as a girl in Utah / I don't know, it's probably more universal than that, but it's a really big problem in rural Utah and in fundamentalist groups. It really sucks. So there's an example of the lock your heart talk. There's more where that came from. And that's the kind of stuff that we were super excited to be able to get to read, because it was something new in addition to the very small things we were typically reading all the time. But wow. Okay, so let's get started then. Monday, December 1st, 2014, Mission Day 62. Sister Johnson and I made it. We made it to preparation day. We were so ready for a rest. Gail had invited us over yesterday, so this afternoon, after Walmart, we went to her home where we made cherry walnut bites and decorated sugar cookies and gingerbread men. It was fun and delicious, smiley face. We found out that Gail is working right now. She just hasn't been able to go to work because of some medical conditions. She's hoping to get it fixed soon, though. We've been trying to set up a time to meet with Esther for 6 weeks now, and yesterday Brenda invited us and them over for dinner so we could finally do the plan of salvation. Well, after dinner today, they announced to us that, quote, Esther would like to be baptized, unquote, which made putting her on date pretty easy, winky face. Due to the amount of cookies we ate and made today, Sister Johnson and I expressed strong desires to not gain weight this transfer. We shall overcome. Okay, just a couple things to point out from this entry. When I was reading through the first time and going through and changing names, I discovered that I not only said we went to this lady's home, I actually put in her actual physical street address, which to me now is like, wow, that's an invasion of privacy, and that's like a boundary crossing. So I obviously didn't include it here. But it's very telling, like, at the time, I was constantly, like, getting people's contact info and getting their address from them, and or even just writing it down after we talked to them, and they didn't even know that I took down their address and their name, and we would, like, make note of children they had. If they mentioned their kids' names, we would write all this down in the area book, which, on my mission, it was like a physical book where we would write stuff down, but now all the area books are online. So hopefully the church has really good security, and hopefully no one ever leaks that, because literally that's just people going around and collecting other people's private information and just putting it online, and they're totally not consenting to this. This is one of the things that is really messed up about missionaries' lack of boundaries and knowledge that that's a problem. It was exciting that Esther wanted to be baptized, and so I guess sounds like we had the goal to put her on date, unquote, which, we wanted to give her a date to get baptized, so it was helpful that she already wanted to do that. Although I will point out, if she was being raised by her grandma, and her grandma had joined the church, and she was, getting brought into the community, like, how much of this was really her just of her own volition wanting to get baptized and be part of this thing, and how much of it was just she wanted to make her grandma happy and she wanted to be like the new friend she was making, And then, of course, we get, once again, the discussion of not wanting to gain weight and being afraid of eating cookies. Yeah, it's almost old hat at this point, but I don't want to just not talk about it and not mention that it's not super healthy, and it's showing me that we had unhealthy focuses on our bodies and maintenance and the way that we looked, which is, that is definitely not only a Mormon thing, but I didn't used to worry about it this much before my mission, I could tell you that. Tuesday, December 2nd, 2014, Mission Day 63. We had a really cool experience during our studies this morning. I had a nice hour of personal study, and we were just finishing up sharing what we'd learned and beginning to plan our lessons when the Turtle Lake elders, Elder Witt and Elder Kimball, called. I was pretty sure it would be important since it was still so early in the morning. They explained that they were in a lesson with Joshua, and that he had something he wanted to say to Sister Finlinson. My heart skipped a beat when I heard that. Was I in trouble? Was he about to ask a way intense question? I hoped he was just calling to share his recipe for ooey gooey cake. Sister Johnson was also taken pretty off guard. After waiting a minute, Joshua got to the phone. We always leave it on speaker as missionaries. And said, he's been wanting to talk to me since Sunday. Gulp. Brace yourselves. He then went on to explain that my talk about following the prophets had really struck him. He'd been having a hard time with some point of doctrine, but he realized that, quote, there is no compromise. This is what the gospel... this is what it is, and we have to follow ASAP, unquote. It had taken him a couple days to get his thoughts. I definitely didn't expect that reaction. I really didn't expect any reaction. It was really fun going outside today just because it was so warm. Yesterday, I think it got to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, so at 20 degrees, we thought it was pretty balmy, smiley face. We finally found a place to do service in Scranton. We can go to the Salvation Army thrift store and help with clothes. We went for the first time today, and of course, we both found clothes to buy. I personally found a pink danskin exercise shirt for $2. So I bought it, smiley face. Thrift stores may be hard for me. I gotta talk about the choice to write down the phone call, and also I gotta talk about the phone call. So it was very both terrifying and flattering to realize that something that I had said over the pulpit had such an impact over a man, no less. Especially since this guy, I think he was like an inactive member and the elders were meeting with him to like try to help him be more active or something, or I don't know, maybe he was having troubles with his faith. I'm not sure what the situation was, but the fact that he was working with the elders, but something that I said was what helped him, felt like, oh, wow, I feel like I was very inspired and I'm feeling like very ego boosted, feeling very like cool. But there's this weird thing where like I didn't really feel like I could brag about it because I needed to be like humble about it, and I was also not really, like, it was honest when I said I didn't expect any reaction from him or anyone. Like, I didn't expect the stuff that I was saying to really matter to anyone. So it really was, like, jarring, and it took me off guard when people, like, cared what I said. And it, like, made a difference to them. Which, saying that now, I'm like, yeah, I guess I still kind of feel that way a lot. Like, I think it's hard for just people in general and, you know, women, you know, I guess I can speak to my experience. It's hard for me as a woman to believe that if I put something of myself out into the world, that it'll mean anything, that it'll make a difference. So in a way, it's like kind of cool to look back at this and see how I was proven wrong from that, and I had an experience where I got to feel a little bit of like my internal power like shaping the world around me. But the sad thing is, anytime something like this happened, there was a little bit of like it felt good inside, but the reality was I never took credit for it. It was never me. It was never my own power. It was never my own like work or wisdom or whatever. It was from God. So like I just felt like, if anything, relief. Like, thank goodness I had been being obedient enough, good enough, righteous enough that I was able to say what God wanted me to say, so that these people heard what they needed to hear and felt what they needed to feel. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm so cool and I should like keep pursuing this thing that I'm interested in. I'm talented in this. I have skill in this. I should pursue this. It was like, oh, okay, so I guess things sort of lined up and I didn't get in the way, and like God's work goes forward. It's making me make faces, but I guess you can't see that. I'm making faces about that, and I'm kind of frustrated because it really sucks to be dealing with that right now. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, no, one more thing. I have to talk about missionaries and doing service, because I don't think I've talked about this yet, and this also is wild to me, and probably wild to you if you don't know about it. So, it's thought of that if you go on a mission, like, it's like you're doing a service. And lots of young people seem to like to do things like go Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, or whatever, which, you know, those are their own things. I won't talk about that. But the idea is if someone's like going on a mission trip, they're going to be like, you know, even if they're like participating in colonialism and whatever, at least they're like helping someone build a house maybe, or like physically like digging a well maybe, you know. But on our mission, and in a lot of missions actually, we were told not to do too much service, and we got in trouble sometimes if we were spending too many of our hours doing service and we weren't actively proselyting and like looking for people and teaching them. So we were allowed to have like a place that was approved where we could go and do service. So we really wanted to do that because it was hard to have, one, it was hard to like have enough things to do with your time if you were only proselyting, and two, we felt like if we were giving to the community and involved in serving the community, that would help the church's reputation and that would help us have more people. Like down the road 20 years, if this town knows that the missionaries don't just come in and try to baptize you, but they'll also like stick around and like give to the community, like we thought that was an important thing. So we found a place, we found a thrift store where we were allowed to go in and help, and it was really nice to be able to do something that wasn't like proselyting for like a couple hours a week. But we were not supposed to do it very long, and I think I'm sure I'll write about it at some point later on. There's like, oh, oops, everyone's doing too much service, you gotta cut down your hours and make sure you're not doing that, which is not, I think, what most people are expecting is happening for Mormon missionaries. So, fun little tidbit. Okay. Wednesday, December 3rd, 2014. Mission Day 64. Most intense weekly planning session ever! Since we're only spending one day in Ellendale, tomorrow, we decided to move our planning a day ahead. And it's a good thing we did because that took a solid 5 hours. But we have the area book figured out, and we've found some people we can visit, so it was definitely worth it. Really, the only bad thing about weekly planning is the part where you're sitting by a kitchen for hours. It's really hard to restrain. I think we ate 2 platters of cookies, frowny face, and now I feel super gross. Oh well. We just drove up to Ellendale after stopping at the church to visit people at Mutual and to eat Sister These's dinner. So we get to stay in the castle house again, smiley face. I guess we called the Crarie's house the castle house. That's kind of cute. But, yeah, you know what I'm gonna say. It's too bad that sitting at home with plates full of cookies was turned into such a weird, like, binge restrict temptation, like, honestly thinking that the devil was like trying to tempt us, you know? It's not just like a psychological thing. It's like there's this weird spiritual element to it that just makes it even more intense and weird. Of course, for me, there was probably the element of, you know, impulse control, ADHD, But I think in general, my general experience now that I'm a little bit further out from this and I've had the chance to learn a little bit more about what do current dietitians say about this kind of thing. My understanding is that it's best to not have any restriction at all and just let yourself have as much of something as you want. And then if you need support, if that kind of strategy isn't helping, then obviously seek professional support, seek a therapist, seek a dietitian, talk to a medical doctor, of course. But I find if I just let myself know that I will always have ice cream or whatever in the freezer, and if I want some for a snack, I could just have some and it's not a big deal. I don't feel like I have to plow through it, and it doesn't have the weird I don't eat 2 plates of cookies in one sitting anymore typically. It's not something that I worry about because I don't have this, I'm not building this neurotic thought cycle around it. So that's too bad. Let's just carry on. Thursday, December 4th, 2014, Mission Day 65. Missionary miracle! Really big smiley face. So today we were on Ellendale, and it was starting to feel like a waste of time because we couldn't get in to meet with anyone. The Wyricks were gone, Kelly was busy, the Schreibers can't see us until January, Jillian never responded, Brandon and Tiffany's son never opened the door. It was definitely seeming like that feeling of Ellendale has people for you to find that Sister Elliot had our first night there was no longer valid? There are the Rubles a bit out of town, but I remembered her saying over the phone that she'd be gone from December 1st through the 15th. So I told Sister Johnson it'd waste miles. We ended up driving to Roulette to find one Cassidy Simmons, or someone of a similar name. She was a headquarter referral about 3 years old in the area book we thought we'd check out, but her address did not exist. We even asked a man for directions and left him with a card. It was a beautiful day, though, so on the way back to Ellendale, when we passed the beautiful scene of the sun setting over a pond, Sister Johnson requested we stop for a picture. I, being the nature sucker, totally agreed and pulled over. We snapped our pictures and realized we were right by the Rubles' home, so we decided we'd just go and knock on their door to say we had. And guess what? They were home. Sister Rubles let us in, and her 3 young sons are in a religious group in Ellendale. She didn't think her husband would like us very well, but he came back after we finished our message of he is the gift, and he totally didn't kick us out. Winky face. We're welcome back after they come home from their several-month-long trip to Wyoming. They were only home for this couple of days. We were totally led by the Lord. So, yeah. That's my little miracle story. I think that it is surprising that we found them when they were home, although I'm curious as to whether or not we were we actually led there by a divine hand to find them at a specific day when they were actually home and finally home, or was it that when I called her, she didn't want us to come? Her husband would not want involvement with the church at all. There was some sort of something there. She didn't want us to come. And so she just said, oh yeah, we're going to be gone for a while. And then we went anyway, and they were home. And they're like, all right, well, we'll be polite and we won't kick you out, but please leave. And we're going to be gone for several months, so don't come back. And we just kind of listened to them and thought that we'd had a little miracle when actually they were just really trying to get us to stop bothering them. You'll never know. We'll never know. Friday, December 5th, 2014. Mission Day 66. Today we got to have our December training. We drove up with the Turtle Lake elders and had sisters meeting first. Here's some stuff to remember. Our focus was lock your heart, which completely reminded me of Sister Apolloni's lecture about being stoic and not letting yourself feel or share. I think of locking your heart in the sense that you're being selfish and unwilling to help others. I really like Sister Patterson's comments on the topic. She doesn't like the idea so much of being in control, of stomping out distraction, but she instead compared it to consecrating yourself to the Lord. It's easy to serve with all your might and strength, and even your mind could be easily focused on people and plans and scriptures. But as we learn to give our will to God, as we reserve our heart for Christ, we can find the balance we need. I want to bend my wandering heart, in quotes, to Christ, and I can do that as I focus on our purpose now, as I learn to turn out in Christ-like love, repent. Ask yourself, am I representing Jesus Christ, or am I representing myself? We led off the subject to talk about the importance of our behavior as representatives of Christ. I have seen a lot, and then there's just a line, and then I wrote, skip to exchanges. It was super fun to work with Sister Patterson, and she taught me a lot. She taught me how important it is to take time to pause, to plan, to unpack, to talk to your companion. We got to meet with the Peabodys, and while I was distracted by the kids, she took the reins and gave a lesson on He is the Gift, the focus of ZTM, Zone Training Meeting. She's so genuine and sincere when she teaches. Okay, so I already kind of gave a spiel on Lock Your Heart. So it would seem that when I heard we were talking about this talk and we probably read it and then we talked about it, I'm getting passive aggressive vibes from my journal where I was like, I don't like this talk, and I don't like saying we need to control how we feel, which is funny because that's totally what I was trying to do all the time. But when I talk about the lecture on being stoic and like not letting yourself feel or share, I'm referring to in the semester of school before my mission, I was in the BYU Women's Chorus, which was a fabulous experience with a fabulous conductor. And she, I remember still a message she had for us around one of the pieces that we sang. And she talked about how we have plenty of women who are stoic. We need more women who are kind. There are plenty of women who are just cut themselves off from the world, and what we need to do as women is we need to be emotionally available and vulnerable, especially as musicians, which that is already something to unpack, but that was the way I was looking at this Lock Your Heart talk, because for me, I was not even worried about romance or wanting to have sex with anyone or anything like that. So the way that I looked at this is I was kind of offended that my sister training leader thought I even needed to be told to do this. And I think I was maybe pushing back at it a little bit at the meeting. Maybe bringing up I don't think it's good to just totally lock yourself and be selfish and not helping others. So thankfully, Sister Patterson could tell where I was coming from, and she reframed it for me in a way that I was able to be less rigid about. So she's don't think of locking your heart as being in control of your heart or stomping out your heart. Think of it as consecrating your heart. And I was okay, because consecrating yourself to the Lord is a really big thing, especially for missionaries. At some point, I will talk about the consecrate your heart talk as well. That was a really big impact on my mission. But looking at the lock your heart idea from that perspective, I was oh yes, of course we need to lock our heart to anything except for God and religion, because that's totally everything I want to focus on, and that's like what I want to do with my mission. And then, of course, I thought that was a balanced perspective. I wrote, we can find balance as we reserve our heart for Christ. And now, of course, I would not see that as a very balanced thing to do, alas. And I even out loud say, in my journal, I say, am I representing Jesus Christ or am I representing myself? So it just comes back to that. I need to, as a sister, I'm not worried about, I'm not, feeling tempted to, go and have an affair or something. But, as a sister, I'm, up on a pedestal, and I need to, lock my heart to myself. I need to lock myself. I'm just gonna be every thought, every feeling to Jesus, to my God, and be his missionary, Ugh. It does seem like Sister Patterson did have some good advice for me, though, in addition to this maybe less helpful reframing of that, where she was like, hey, make sure you take time to pause, as in, okay, Sister Finlinson, I know we're supposed to follow the schedule, but sometimes, you have to unpack your stuff. And it's sort of not stated clearly and explicitly in the handbook that you need to take time to unpack your things. Or if your companion is overwhelmed and upset, you need to stop and talk to them. She sort of explained to me that this is an implicit rule, and it's okay to stop and unpack our things. Sounds like maybe we were not even giving Sister Johnson time to unpack her stuff, and it had been a while since she had joined me in my companionship in the area. So yikes, that's a little I feel bad about that looking back at that now. Let's continue. Saturday, December 6, 2014, Mission Day 67. Last transfer, when I ended exchanges with Sister Rowley, I was definitely sad to say goodbye. I'd seen and learned so many new good things, but I didn't know how to incorporate them to Sister Elliot. But this time, Sister Kiona had us talk a lot about goals for improvement. And now I have a plan to improve in teaching. Hooray! I can't wait to see her again. We totally went to see the elderly Sister Peabody in the hospital, and we sang to her. It was so fun. Sister Kiona, yes, Polynesian, is what I wrote in parentheses, has an awesome soul/gospel style soprano voice, so she'd do that while I just harmonized all over the place. We actually sang hymns for half an hour of comp study this morning. Smiley face. The original time to switch back companions after exchanges was at 3, but due to the transfer truck breaking down, Sister Kiona and I were together until about 7. I'm so happy to be back with Sister Johnson at the Martins' home. It's so wonderful to have someone else who knows what's going on. Okay, I gotta talk about that, what just happened. So I could tell that I was writing a name that wasn't very, you could say white passing, So I had to clarify for the reader that yes, Sister Kiona is Polynesian, because I guess that was important. It felt important. And I don't think that it is bad to include somebody's background, familial background. But I do notice that I only ever do it if it's someone who, had a very different background than me. Basically, I don't know how to say this, but it's giving me a red flag. And also the part that I feel like I could talk more about was what I said right after that, where I said that Sister Kiona has an awesome soul/gospel style soprano voice. So she just did that, and I like sing harmonies. Okay, so I think I was just trying to describe the vibe. And I also want to clarify that it's totally fine to sing in like a quote soul style or like a gospel style. And I know that that's like that like has like roots in like race and ethnicity, you know? And I think like that's cool music. But the soapbox that I have about this is later on, when I was at BYU and I was going through the beginnings of my faith crisis and feeling very aware of the built-in racism within LDS doctrine, and then also I was really getting more serious about becoming a classical singer, and I was starting to reckon with the history of classism and racism in classical music and specifically opera. So I ended up writing one of my like big papers for my like writing about humanities class. I did research paper and I wrote about like different lines of racism in opera. I definitely didn't cover it all because I wasn't talking to an expert, and I was just kind of first diving into awareness of the topic. So it's definitely more dimensional than what I will tell you now. But what I learned in that paper was people have this idea that if you are black or BIPOC, you know, Polynesian, whatever, in this case Polynesian, people tend to have the idea that you'll sound different from like quote a white singer if you are like black, is the example in my paper. And I found a research project that someone did where they took recordings of different singers and then they compared it with reactions from like if people could see the singer versus if they just heard the recording. And in fact, there is not, at least in opera, there is no difference between the sound of a singer if they're like black or if they're white or, you know, whatever. So it's like wild to me to have written that paper and have been frustrated about that and like trying to educate myself and hopefully educate some of my peers maybe, and realize that I had done the same like racial profiling in my own journal on my mission, like of that very specific thing. I was like, oh, because Sister Kiona is Polynesian, when she's singing with like style or fervor or whatever, I was like, this is specifically soul style, this is specifically gospel style. And I don't know if that was actually her training, but I would assume, like, it's wild that I was assuming that, you know? And it's certainly not something we ever talked about, because that is not something you talk about when you're Mormon missionaries. So I had to go on a rant about that. And if you know more about it and you want to talk to me about it, that would be awesome. Hit me up. I have a lot to learn. We all have a lot to learn. But I definitely think it's good to talk about and good to learn more about and hopefully stop microaggressing all the time like I was doing in my journal. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here's the last day. We have some Sunday, December 7th, 2014. Mission Day 68. So, last night in training, Sister Johnson mentioned that she'd called people to wake them up for church tomorrow. And when we called Rhonda, we ended up setting that up. We called her at 6:40 this morning, and it was kind of strange, but she came to the church today and arranged for a ride from Brenda, so I'd do it again. We finally did our transfer vision today. We want to get 2 LA, less active, families to the temple, find a family, and involve the members in Scranton, especially the Swans. So now we have something to lean on, smiley face. Woohoo! 8 HITGs today. That is referring to He is the Gift, a social media Christmas campaign that was being pushed by missionaries during the Christmas season that year. Okay, so different topic than what I was just talking about before this day, but still egregious. Still an egregious, uncomfortable thing to read and realize that I was doing this 10 years ago. Hopefully not anymore. But what is egregious, you might ask? It is being so pushy about trying to get people to come to church because we were so sick of them not coming to church that we're like, hey, do you want us to give you a wake-up call so you finally get your lazy self into church? And I said Rhonda. I don't think it was Rhonda. It was the sister who, it wasn't Rhonda. I can't remember the name I changed it to, but it was the sister whose hair I had done. And the one, she was I guess she was an investigator. She's an investigator. I did her hair. She fed me a giant pile of brownies. It was her who we called at 6:40 in the morning to get her up in time to come to church. How embarrassing. That's very embarrassing for me to look back at now and realize I wrote down that I was like, it was uncomfortable and it was strange, but it worked, so I'd do it again. Like, why was I in a situation where it felt like it was appropriate for me as a 19-year-old to be calling a woman in her 50s and giving her a wake-up call to get herself to church? Ugh. Ugh. Yeah, something I didn't really realize to the full extent when I was deciding to read my journals publicly was just how often I was doing really embarrassing things. At least things now I look back on, it's like pretty embarrassing and cringy. I knew that there was some of this, but I didn't realize that it was like every day I was doing stuff like this and writing about it. So hopefully it's enlightening for you and helpful for you, because it's pretty uncomfortable for me. And yet I think it's important to show what life really was like for me, and like to sort of peel back the facade and the veneer of what we think is going on with missionaries and really Orthodox, some Mormons. I mean, I can really only speak for myself, but I don't think I was the only person who was doing this and who thought this way and felt this way. I think it's really important to show where I was and also to show where I am now. Obviously, I still have a lot to learn. I probably still do really cringy things a lot, but it's only in, as you could say, that a testimony is found in sharing it. I would take that logic and say only by revealing the things that I'm ashamed of can the shame be, processed and moved, and then the the sort of troubling behaviors or beliefs then have room to maybe transform a little bit, maybe get a little more gray instead of black and white, a little bit more nuanced. a little bit more experience. So that's what I'll leave you with today. And that's my 10th week as a Mormon sister missionary. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you want to continue following my story. Ratings and reviews are appreciated, and if you'd like to financially support this or my other creative work, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Ally Christiansen. I hope you have a great week, and if you want my advice, just remember that you can love others best when you love yourself first. Bye!